Well, joining me now on 891 Mornings is Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal, based in New York, for our regular discussion on matters over in the US and around the world. Good morning, Gerald.
Good morning, Ian.
Now, this morning, a lot of talk about Edward Snowden and the way that he's managed to escape, if you like, out of Hong Kong over to Russia. And I think the US administration are pretty annoyed that the Chinese appeared to have at least assisted by neglect in letting Snowden get away.
Well, of course they're annoyed, but you know what the biggest story is? Snowden isn't saying anything new. There have been a number of people reporting on exactly what he said. The only thing difference is that he has the facts. We did a Trends Journal. It's the spring issue of 2012, and we called it Big Bro. And we said, without the public really noticing or caring enough to notice, Obama's 2012 had become Orwell's 1984. Big Brother had arrogated to himself full power to do as he pleased. And we go on to talk about the NDAA, the NDRP, all these executive orders that have been passed, one after another. And again, this is nothing new. You go back to 2009, we wrote about this, about how Obama was out-bushing Bush. So they're all upset about what Snowden is doing, but all he's doing is he has the proof that Big Brother is watching us all the time.
President Obama has reacted to this by saying you can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience. We're going to have to make some choices. I suppose you could say on the other side that if you've got planes flying to buildings and people dying in New York, that they had to do something. So is the reaction watching people's emails and checking their phone calls understandable at least?
Well, no, it's not understandable in the sense that, you know, you're looking, what did about 3,000 people die at 9/11? How many people has America and the UK and their NATO allies slaughtered since that time? Let's just start with Iraq. According to whosever numbers you look at, it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. How about what's going on in Afghanistan? You know, you want to talk about an eye for an eye. You know, it's an eye for a whole country. So who are the terrorists? And why are they attacking America? It couldn't be because of foreign policy of propping up all these dictators. And again, you know, how about that wonderful Libyan war that they started? Now they're going into Syria. And if when Obama says, you know, it's either 100% or nothing, you know, they love these politicians, Ian. They love to quote the founding fathers. Try this one on for size, President Obama. Listen to Benjamin Franklin, quote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." And that's what's happened. And we have to make something very clear here. This is just another division of the military-industrial complex. What it is the military security complex. For example, according to the Financial Times, Americans are spending $80 billion, that's right, $80 billion on so-called security. 895,000 government contractors. Among those government contractors, one of them is Booz Allen. The perfect name. It's Booz, all right. And the head of Booz Allen, Mike McConnell, by coincidence, have you, he was the former NSA head under Bill Clinton from 1992 to 1996. This is a joke. It's all about money. It's not about security. Who did they catch? Oh, the underpants bomber, the underpants bomber. You know, come on. You know, these guys fail at everything. This is a lot of hype and fear to keep the game going.
And so you're saying the National Security Administration is really running out all these contracts as almost an economic measure. It's just part of big business. The same way as you say, well, they need to have something to do, so they just do it, and they just create more and more work for themselves.
It's a takeover. And I'm not saying that. It was General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Mm.
You know, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, and 2-term president, a Republican at that, who warned the nation as he's leaving office that the military-industrial complex, his term, is robbing the nation of the future of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of its laborers, and the future of its children. Voila. We have it. The nation's been ruined. While China, by the way, is waging business, America keeps waging war.
What did you think of John Kerry's comment, though, that Snowden has run away to China and Russia? He says countries which have got, of course, as we know, very open internet policies. Turn on the irony meter.
You know, the irony is that when a guy has to leave and go to China to hope to get some freedom, that's the real irony. And you want to talk about breaking an oath? Hey, how about that lovely war that George W. Bush started? Oh, you know that one, Iraq, where Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda that never existed? What did this kid do? And I love it, too. You know, they look at these young boys, the Manning, who's another one being persecuted by the nation, Bradley Manning for the WikiLeaks leaks, and showing U.S. pilots in helicopters slaughtering innocent Iraqis. Oh, yeah, you know, torture him almost to death. And this kid Snowden. Well, where's everybody else standing up and speaking out on the atrocities being committed in the name of freedom and democracy?
So what do you think will happen? Will they track him down because Julian Assange is in the Ecuadorian embassy? He's been there for a year. It looks like Edward Snowden's seeking some sort of assistance from Ecuador as well. Are we going to see the Americans try and get them out of these embassies? Are they going to pursue them to the ends of the earth, as you say, and get their man?
Yes, they will. I mean, there was just a report that came out, I think it was like over the last, I don't know how many years, that the FBI shot 150 people. And, of course, every one of those investigations was found to be justified, including the one they just blew away with a couple of bullet holes in his head as they were questioning him in Florida. There's no end. They're not going to stop. Will they get their man? Will they bring him to justice? What difference will it make? What has this kid done? All he's done is spill the beans on all the wiretapping that's going on not only in the United States, but the United States is watching everyone. You saw the minute the information coming out about the G20 and G8 meetings. They were spying on people. What's going on over here?
What about the relationship now between the US and China? Because it seems that clearly the Americans are saying, look, we're not very happy about the fact that Snowden's got out of China and got to Russia, and now they're leaning on Russia to say, hand him over. So what will the Russians do, do you think?
Considering the relationship that Vladimir Putin has with Barack Obama recently, I seriously doubt they're going to hand him over. With China, the bottom line is the bottom line. It's all about business. Look, I remember when they were debating opening up and doing business with China. You know, I was a kid growing up. You know, all you were taught to do is to hate the Russians and those red Chinese. Until they started doing business with them, and then they would say things, well, we're going to firmly question them on their human rights issues. You know, that's just smoke, and that's all it is right now. They're not going to jeopardize what's going on in business for this kid and slap any sanctions on China, not when China is, you know, it's so many multinational U.S. corporations depend on it, not only to make their products, but to sell them over there. So you won't see any kind of pressure being exerted on China. But Russia's a different story, because you also have the Syrian crisis, where Russia's firmly standing behind Syrian President Assad, and the United States and NATO is firmly intent upon overthrowing them. So there's not going to be any give from Russia. As a matter of fact, it's more like a beginning of a new Cold War.
So Snowden could possibly even stay in Russia, could he? Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think he will try and get out and go to Ecuador?
Either Ecuador, if I was him, I'd go to Havana. He'd have a better time, you know.
Go to Cuba.
yeah, that's what I mean. Cuba, you know, the music's better, the food's real good, you know, nice climate. No, he'd be safer, actually, probably in Cuba, because after all, as we saw from the CIA minutes that they've released over the years, is that, you know, how the CIA tried to assassinate Castro a number of times and failed. So that would probably be his best refuge.
Just on that issue of the possibility of a war escalating out of Syria, we were talking to a nun yesterday who has been in Syria, and she's very fearful of the future there. Can you see one side building up on one side, another side building up, them supplying troops from two directions? The next minute we see an explosion of war in this part of the world like we've never seen before in the Middle East?
Yes. It's a matter of fact, it was the top trend for our 2013 Trends Journal. The first one was war. And that's what we've been writing about Syria, you know, since the protests broke out 2 years ago. And then what we're seeing there is you have, I love it, these great democracies such as Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, supporting the so-called rebels, along with the United States and the NATO allies. And all it's doing is worsening the war. And I have to tell you, I'm just flabbergasted that people keep letting this happen. Just take the United States, for example. They did a wonderful job in Vietnam. Oh, it was perfect over there in Afghanistan. Terrific job in Iraq. Libya is a vacation paradise now that Nobel Peace Prize winner Obama declared his humanitarian mission, but in better terminology, a time-limited, scope-limited kinetic action. And now they're going to go into Syria? The same people that have created all of these horrors are now being given free rein to fail again and create yet another tragedy of monumental proportions? How can society sit back and let these sociopaths continue to lead them into disaster is beyond me, because what you're going to look in Syria is a spilling over into Lebanon. Again, with Iran being involved, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Israel was already invaded a sovereign country, Syria twice, has bombed them, and then a destabilization going now on in Egypt, where the military just 2 days ago warned that if these protests continue, they're going to crack down. Yemen is up for grabs. Bahrain's on the edge. Oh, yeah, let's make it worse in Syria. Brilliant.
On one positive note, it appears as if the Americans and the Australians will be leaving Afghanistan. So, I mean, is that one thing we can say, at least by the end of this year, that situation will have changed to the point where we won't see any more troops dying? We just lost another soldier in Afghanistan only a couple of days ago.
They've destroyed the place, and they have a criminal government in place now. The Taliban is probably going to take over again, and nothing has been accomplished other than made a bunch of military contractors really rich, destroyed an entire country, and sacrificed the soldiers for another fruitless cause. Again, I don't know how people could continue to let these atrocities go on. I had a very difficult time for a while when they asked me to do a trend forecast on Afghanistan. And I used to be on CNN, all the shows. And I said, why ask me? Why don't you ask Alexander the Great, the British, and the Russians? They couldn't defeat them. What makes you think the Americans and NATO are?
All right, thank you again for your time. Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, a regular commentator based in New York. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ian.